Hi, it's John Glynn, and in this session of Photoshop Elements 20 I'm going to be looking at the layers panel. So you need the layers panel open, and you should have a background layer with your little thumbnail of your photograph. And in this particular session we're going to be looking at creating a blank layer. Okay, create a new layer. Basically, it's the very first option in the top list at the top of your layers panel. The issue with new layers is there are things that we wish to do which don't have layers built in. Okay, some of the tools do. If we're looking at the tool box on the left hand side, we already know that the custom shape tool has it creates its own layer automatically. Okay, so we wouldn't need to create a blank layer to use this particular tool because it already does it. And we do the same with text. If you're doing text, you don't need to create a blank layer because text will automatically create its own layer. Okay, but there are times when we want to use tools over in the toolbox which don't automatically create their own layers. So we would need to create a layer ourselves to be able to use them in the way that might work best for whatever it is we're doing. So I'm going to go through a couple of ways of working with layers. It will be a fairly detailed video, this one, tutorial, so it may take a bit of time just to get your head around and maybe needing a couple of times to watch it. But we're going to go to the background layer to start with, and I'm going to duplicate the background layer. Okay, so we have a background layer duplicated, and I'm going to create a blank layer on that, and I'm going to fill the blank layer with a color. So to do that, I can quite easily do that by going over to Edit and Fill Layer, and in this I've got the choice of doing foreground color or background color or a different color altogether. I'm going to use a background color which is white, and I'm going to say OK. And then I can drag this layer, because the layers can move up and down by just holding down the left mouse key, dragging it down. I can move it below the original picture or above. In fact, I was going to leave it above. I don't know why I did that. In this particular one I was going to leave it at the top actually, sorry about that, but you can move them up and down by just dragging them around, but this one is going to be left at the top. And I'm going to go this time to my marquee tool. I have a little blip of what it couldn't remember quite what I was going to be doing, but I'm going to go to the marquee tool and I'm going to create a vignette. So all I need to do is drag out a shape over my picture. I can move it around, and then when I'm kind of happy where it happens to be, I can go up to Edit and I can cut, and I now have a vignette. If you're not too happy with it, I'll just undo that. You can just start again with a different size vignette, for instance, and just do Edit and cut again. So now I've got a hole cut in my piece of paper, if you like, my blank layer, which I'd filled with white paint, and I can see through that to the picture below. And anything you see that's checkered in Photoshop means it's see-through, so you can see something below it. So in this case you can see the picture below, and I can move that picture below because I can highlight that layer, the background copy layer, go to my move tool, and I can move that picture around to reposition it. Okay, if I wish to. So, and I can resize it because it's still there. There is a limit to how I can resize, but there is a resize option there as well, and you just then have to tick it when you're happy with its position, but you can move it as often as you like and move it about independently of the layer 1 in this case, which is just a blank layer painted white. Okay, so that's a quick way of just creating a vignette, and you could have done it with a soft edge as well when I did the original cutout, if you like, and have a soft edged vignette. Okay, so that's an option. Another thing you can do, I'm going to make another duplicate copy, duplicate the layer, say OK, and this time I'm going to drag it up right to the very top. And I can turn all the others off because they're no longer important to me. And in this case I'm going to actually cut a hole in the actual picture. So I'm going to go back to my marquee, and I'm going to drag a vignette or drag a shape onto my picture. You can always refine the edge and soften edges if you wish. There is a feathering option, so you can soften edges. I can then go up to select and inverse the selection. So now what's going to happen is it will select everything on the outside of my selection. You see another marquee, and I can go to edit and cut, and now I have a picture which, as you can see from my layers panel, I've cut a hole in the actual photo, so the outside of it is now clear. Okay. For doing this, it might be because I want to put a colour behind this photograph. So in that case, I can do that quite simply by creating another blank layer, create a new layer. I can choose to put a colour into this layer by going over to Edit and Fill Layer. I have background colour, which could be white. I have foreground colour, in our case is black, but I can also choose a different colour altogether if I wish to, and I could actually choose a colour from the photo itself. So if I put my colour picker over the top of my photograph, I can choose a shade of green that I may like and say that's okay, that's what I'm looking for, and I say okay. And when I say OK here, my new layer that I created has gone completely green. But now if I drag that below my photograph, I now have my photo on a sheet of green paper. Okay, but they're independent of one another. They're two separate layers. I could also then decide to put a border around this particular layer. And to do that, again, I can go back to my background copy too, create another layer, which is now another blank layer. And this time I go back to my marquee, so the stuff pops up on my monitor. I'll just get rid of that. I'll go back to my marquee, and I can drag a shape out, similar shape to the original. It doesn't have to be exactly the same at this stage. As long as I've dragged out the shape, you can see a marquee there. And I can then go up to Edit, and this time I'm going to stroke. Stroke means I'm going to give it a border, and I've given it a 30 pixel border. I could do it smaller, I could do 20 for instance. And I've done an outside, but you could do centre or inside. I'll just stick with outside because I can resize it. I can say OK. So I've now got a border there. And I can now go up to select and deselect, so I no longer got the marquee. I don't need the marquee anymore. But I do need to make sure that the layer 3 is highlighted. Layer 3 you can rename, so I could put a name in that and say border, so you know what it is. You can actually see it anyway drawn out. And you can go to, I'll just click away, there we are, border. Make sure it's highlighted on the border. I can then go to my move tool, which is in the toolbox, the move tool, which is a top left or near the top left, and it now gives me a bounding box. So that allows me to move the border. It allows me to resize the border. Independently of the picture below. So everything here is independent. So I've now got a border, a green background and a photo, and all I have to do is then, once I've got it into position, say OK, go back to my pictures, whatever it might be, and there's my image. So creating blank layers allows me to paint on them shapes, in this case the oval. It allows me to paint a background colour completely independently of the photograph, in this case the green background. And so it enables you to work with pictures which are independent of of the tools on the left hand side that may not in themselves create an actual blank layer themselves. Okay, so some tools you can't use on layers at all, they have to actually be used on an actual photo, but there are times when a blank layer is really useful. We would sometimes use them with the clone stamp tool. You can do the same on the clone. You can paint onto a blank canvas, so on, or a blank layer if you like, create a new layer and paint onto that. You can obviously put colours on as well. So it's a matter of just having a go with it and understand the process of what you're doing, and this is quite a good way of learning, just to do a vignette, to cut shapes and create a new blank, and create a new blank layer, just create a new layer. Okay, so have a go with that and just see how you get on. Thank you very much for watching.